In my short video, Different Types, I briefly describe myth as something grand and large, older and more epic than, say, a fairy tale. However, myth as a term has a wide range of meanings and, of course, interpretations. So, what is myth? The term comes from the Greek word mythos, which at one point in time meant words, or anything that was spoken was considered a mythos. The term was later redefined to include any story or any telling of an event, and later it became truth, or something that people believed in. Today we simply define myth as ancient stories, but it is how we look at that story which decides how we will interpret it. There are almost literally hundreds of ways myth can be interpreted, but generally they can be broken down into two specific ways: literal and symbolic. Symbolic suggests myths are only representations of ideas or explanations of natural occurrences. A good example would be etiology myth or natural phenomenon, where we look at myth as a way of explaining daily, monthly or yearly occurrences, like the sun rising, the wind blowing, or even a natural disaster. Loki's punishment at the hands of Skadi and Odin shows how earthquakes were explained by the Nords. When the snake, which sat above his head, dripped its poison on him, he would struggle against his bond so viciously, he would make the earth shake and thus create earthquakes. Another example of symbolic myths would be charter myths, also sometimes called functional myths, where myths were rather used to encourage certain social behaviors or to teach morality. These myths also explained what should and shouldn't be done in society. A good example would be the legend in African mythology of how the cheetah got its tear tracks. A very lazy Zulu hunter saw the cheetah hunting in the field and decided if he had a cheetah of his own, then he would never have to hunt again. So when Cheetah was out, he stole all 3 cubs. A Sangoma or witch doctor later found Cheetah crying, and when he asked her what was wrong, she told him her 3 cubs were missing. He soon found the thief and took the cubs back to Cheetah. Today, the tear tracks of the cheetah is a reminder to all Zulus that you are responsible for your own food, and you should never expect nature to do it for you. Literal mythology is self-explanatory. These stories are accepted to have really happened, and everything we read can be seen as truth. An example of this would be historicism, where myth is rather history than plain story, only distorted over time. Mythologists, or rather historians in this case, look at old myths as proof of certain cultures' existence, shifts in power in society, and events that happened in history, which only lives on in these stories. A very good example of this would actually be the Amazon warriors, whose proof of existence is disputed to this day, or even the legend of King Arthur. There are hundreds of different ways, even more, how we can look at mythology or interpret it. Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud even had their own interpretations, which really could make up their own video. But I hope this just gives you a small taste or an idea of how vast mythology can be and how many different ways we can interpret and look at it. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. Please leave a like and let me know what you thought.